Hi, John Force here, 16-time funny car champ. And I hope we're all practicing social distancing. That's why this face mask. But I can take it off for right now. I want to take a moment and talk to you. I'm here in my shop in Yorba Linda. MATC, a big show, car show up in Milwaukee. I'm really excited about it to have my Peak antifreeze and coolant. It could be Blue Death by the time it gets there. But I'm excited to be part of that, doing a good thing for the inner city. But basically, they wanted me to talk a little bit about the beginning of my career. Yeah, I drove front engine dragsters, nobody knows that. Yeah, I drove fuel Allards and crashed a few times, but that's part of my history. But my very first funny car that I ever owned, that I ever drove, is right here, sitting here in John Force Racing. Robert built this actually for me for my 50th birthday. It was a Vega. Of course, I started with Chevrolet and I'm with Chevrolet now, but my first sponsor was a gentleman, Don Steve Chevrolet. Yes, this was a high-powered engine, okay, exciting. It didn't make the kind of horsepower we make today, 10,000 horsepower. It didn't run 340 miles an hour, and it didn't run the racetrack. It was like 4 or 5 seconds back in those days. But boy, it was a way of life. My other sponsor was Wally Thor's School of Trucking. It was called Truck Masters. And they didn't hire me to drive race cars. I was a truck driver. They really hired me to talk to their students about getting a truck driver's license. And I would go on a regular basis, weekly, to the school to speak to their new recruits. But I got an opportunity. I started racing at Orange County Raceway, Irwindale in the early days. But I got an opportunity because this car was actually originally belonged to Gene Beaver and the Beaver Brothers and Condits, my cousins that raced this. So David Condit was the driver. Henry Harrison also drove this car at one time. But they were in Australia in 1974. They came home. I purchased a car with a check from the government, okay, and I went racing. And it was crazy. I didn't have a clue about driving. I didn't have a clue how to talk to you all. I didn't have a clue about promoting it. But somehow along the way, I found my way. Chevrolet was a big start of that. And I was really proud of this car. I did in this car set the national speed record. I was down in Australia racing with Gary Densham. Y'all know who he is. He drove my auto club car in the early days. Gary was a school teacher. And we went down there racing, and he had to help me get through it. Doug Robinson was my crew chief. He was actually a boat racer. He never ran a fuel funny car. But we survived it. I was on fire every run. I did burnouts in Surfer's Paradise right down through the middle of the town. It was unbelievable. Nothing like, the Peak Chevrolet that I drive today. But in the process of that, I learned my roots. I learned how to entertain the fans. I learned how to take care of the few sponsors that I had. And I learned something that I would love for the rest of my entire life. And that's why we got to get out of this pandemic. We got to get to these car shows and have some fun. We got to get back to the races with NHRA drag racing, and we will. But I set the national speed record, okay? I ran 203 miles an hour in Australia. They were quicker here in the States, and it was a high gear car. It didn't have the multi-clutches like we have now. A smaller engine, but it was in the early days, to me, it was the fastest thing in the world. I loved it. I promoted it. I saw the movie that year that came out was E.T. and Jaws. I never saw E.T., but I saw the Jaws at Barrier Reef. I didn't win the series, Gary Densham did, but I walked out with the national speed record, on fire, out the lights, into a field. And I was sitting there, the fire was going out on the car, I'm waiting for the safety safari. That was when they opened the gates at the end of the track to let us out into an open field. And let me tell you something, I saw something looking in the window, and I was in a cow field, and there was cows standing there. Can you imagine if I would have hit them at over 200 miles an hour? I wouldn't be standing here today. But I loved it. I loved this car. A lot of great memories, things that we did, being on fire, promoting it. And that's where I cut my roots. Australia in the outback. I was part of that. You enjoy the MATC. the big car show you're at here in Milwaukee. And I'll be seeing you soon at the races. God bless you.